Looks like Deadpool rejuvenating the MCU was more than just an educated wish after all. Hey everybody, welcome to Mainly Movies. Today I'm going to be talking about the 34th movie in the MCU, Marvel's 2024 superhero action comedy, Deadpool and Wolverine. If you're new here, please consider subscribing for a variety of movie-related content, like reviews, rank lists, and trailer reactions. All my reviews include a breakdown of the pros and cons, my rating, and some tailored film recommendations, so be sure to watch through to the end of this video for all of that extra content. Deadpool and Wolverine stars Ryan Reynolds, Hugh Jackman, and Emma Corrin, and was directed by Shawn Levy. It tells the story of mutant anti-hero Deadpool, who teams up with a very reluctant Wolverine in order to save his universe. It's very easy to take Deadpool for granted, or to outright dismiss the films. They're often crudely juvenile, almost entirely rely on referential humor, and offer up simplistic storylines that we've seen before in other superhero movies. So this franchise is an easy target, and easy to criticize. But to its credit, Deadpool has had a significant effect on the comic book movie landscape over the last 8 years. It helped to show that passion projects and fan requests can be profitable, that there's a big market for R-rated superhero comedies, and that Deadpool's not just a one-trick, or one-movie pony. This is a franchise that's taken some big risks, but also seen some pretty big payoffs. And that continues now, because Deadpool is officially part of the MCU, and Deadpool and Wolverine marks the first R-rated film entry in the cinematic universe. At this point, audiences have a fairly good understanding of what to expect from a Deadpool movie. There are probably very few people out there who are still on the fence about whether or not Deadpool is for them. Deadpool and Wolverine has all of the hallmarks of a typical Deadpool movie. The meta humor, the entertaining but brutally violent action, the irreverent fun. There's no doubt that this feels like a Deadpool movie, but it does manage to distinguish itself a bit too. The name alone should have been a hint, but this isn't just about Deadpool. Sure, Deadpool 2 had some team-ups in it, with both X-Force and Cable, but that was nothing compared to the team-up elements at play here. Obviously, we've got the pairing of Deadpool and Wolverine, which I'll talk about more later on, but Deadpool also shares the screen with many other characters here. Yes, it's time to talk about those cameos. Sort of. Don't worry, this review is spoiler-free as always, so no specifics here. I'm not even going to spoil the character that was revealed in that final trailer. So first off, a little semantic clarification here. Although this film does feature a lot of genuine cameos, most of the appearances that people are super psyched about here are technically surprise, unannounced supporting characters. They have way more screen time and plot involvement than what we typically expect from a cameo or even an extended cameo. So I wanted to point that out so people know what to expect, but for brevity's sake in this review, I'll just refer to these character appearances as cameos. Again, no specifics here, but there were quite a few exciting and satisfying cameos in this movie. I saw this film at a Thursday night premiere while I was in San Diego for Comic-Con, and let's just say the cameos played extremely well with that crowd. This is definitely an event film, and will be most appreciated by people who are well-versed in Marvel comic book movies. If you're only a casual fan, there's going to be a lot here that you'll recognize as some sort of cameo or reference, but you won't necessarily understand the reference. I've seen this movie twice now, and enjoyed it both times, but whether or not the cameos and film references hold up as well on home viewing remains to be seen. But what about the leads? I mean, this movie is named after them after all. Deadpool as a character is about the same as what we've seen in the past, with Ryan Reynolds still nailing that combination of funny, charismatic, and endearingly obnoxious. And then, of course, we've got Hugh Jackman returning as Wolverine. In the lead up to this film, I know a lot of people were concerned about this return and the character's involvement in this story, primarily due to the emotional impact and legacy associated with his previous, and once believed to be, last screen appearance. I don't want to spoil anything plot related here, but I can say that Logan fans should have no fear. This is a multiverse movie, and this Wolverine is not the Logan Wolverine. In fact, the legacy of that variant of the character has a pretty integral role in this story. All that said, this movie's Wolverine has some pretty similar personality traits, and of course, the same R-rated leeway. This finally brings us to the pairing of Deadpool and Wolverine. This is definitely the core of the film, and what really drives it and keeps it entertaining throughout, even on rewatch. The chemistry here is great, both between the characters and between the actors. This is very much a reluctant, odd couple buddy comedy. These are two characters whose personalities couldn't be more different, so watching them interact is a joy. Think Cable and Deadpool from the previous movie, but much more involved and much more entertaining. They do not get along for a big chunk of this film, with the gruff Logan understandably annoyed by Deadpool. So there's a lot of bickering, a lot of entertaining banter, and also a lot of fighting. The action in this series has always been violent and entertainingly over the top, and that remains true here. The fight sequences are bloody and brutal, with more stabbings than the Halloween and Scream franchises put together. But because the majority of these fights are between mutants with regenerative healing capabilities, it all retains a lighthearted and fun tone. As has been the case with the Deadpool franchise thus far, this third film has a somewhat lackluster story. The premise is good, and the movie's very entertaining, but the plot itself is just average. Not bad, but also nothing all that great either. Once again, the villain element is fumbled, and there are some definite pacing issues. And if you have a low tolerance for exposition, this'll probably be a trying experience for you. So certainly all issues, but to be fair, none of these are issues we haven't already seen in the previous two Deadpool movies. These have never been plot-centric films. They were about the humor and the Deadpool persona, plus the unexpected emotional undercurrents. And that's what we get here. A funny transitional movie about redemption that bridges the gap between two franchises in a very referential Deadpool kind of way. It's a satisfying send-off for the Fox X-Men series, and a fitting start to Deadpool's tenure in the MCU. Alright, let's talk about the pros and cons. Pro number one is the chemistry between Deadpool and Wolverine. I said it before in the review, but this is the central core of this film. Maybe the cameos and references won't hold up in a few years, but this pairing of characters certainly will. This is an odd couple buddy comedy, with two characters on opposite ends of the personality spectrum being forced to work together. Deadpool as a character can be a bit much when there's no one there to keep him in check. Cable filled that role in the last movie, but Wolverine does it even more entertainingly here, never being afraid to throw some banter, put-downs, or adamantium claws Deadpool's way. Ryan Reynolds and Hugh Jackman both do a great job portraying their respective characters here, but it's the violent and humorous pairing of those two characters that takes this film to another level. The second pro is the humor. This is probably pretty expected at this point in the series, but this is a very funny and entertaining film. Comedy's obviously very subjective, and like all of the Deadpool movies, this one throws a varied and continuous barrage of comedy attempts at the audience. As usual, not all of it sticks, but this was probably the most consistently funny entry in the series for me. The more crudely juvenile humor was toned down a bit, while the buddy comedy elements and referential jokes were cranked up a few notches. Your mileage may vary, but I will say that this movie had some of the funniest one-liners and moments of situational humor of the Deadpool franchise for me. The third pro is the action. Another franchise pro mainstay here. The CGI still gets a bit wonky at times, but the fight sequences are at a franchise best here, especially the numerous fights between Deadpool and Wolverine. Most of these fights are creatively choreographed, and they're all entertainingly brutal. It's a very bloody and stabby movie, but the action's always presented in an extremely fun and entertaining way. That's definitely in line with what we've come to expect from the Deadpool franchise. On the con side, the biggest issue is the story. So I'm including this in the cons because it's one of the slightly more negative aspects of this film, but to be fair, it's more underwhelming than it is downright bad. The multiverse premise is decent, but the story itself is kind of aggressively average. It's a very familiar superhero story, just retrofitted within a multiverse skin. There are some pacing issues in the first act, and the second act, though those are mostly covered by cameo excitement. There's also a lot of exposition, which isn't a big deal for me, but I'm somebody with a high exposition tolerance, so it might bother other people more. Again, the story here isn't bad, but it's definitely mostly used as a means of telling jokes and incorporating a deluge of cameos. The second con has gotta be the villains. Again, basically the same deal as the first con. The villains aren't bad, they're just nothing special, and end up being a bit of a weak point as a result. Unfortunately, the story does nothing interesting with the character of Cassandra Nova, so she's there, but never really feels like a proper threat, even though it's clear that she should. And we've also got a secondary villain character, who's mostly there for humor, but I found him more annoying than funny. Not Russell level annoying, mind you, but still a little annoying. Before I give you my rating and recommendations, I want to remind you that if you're interested in buying Deadpool and Wolverine, or any of the other films I mentioned today, I do have affiliate links for all of them in the description below. I get a small commission from anything you buy using one of my links, so I'd really appreciate it if you use them, if you're in the market for any of these movies. I'm gonna give Deadpool and Wolverine 4 out of 5 paws. It's an entertainingly overloaded and often overstimulating ride through the multiverse of fan service. It may not be anything to write home about narratively speaking, but it's a fun transitional film full of bloody action, referential humor, and great chemistry between its titular mutant leads. I would recommend Deadpool and Wolverine to fans of the Deadpool movies or of their irreverent and referential style of humor. Deadpool is definitely a franchise where you know what you're gonna get, stylistically speaking, and that holds true here. This is a very referential film, and a lot of the jokes and character appearances rely on knowledge of the Fox X-Men series, the MCU movies, and even some of the MCU TV shows. Fans in the know will get a kick out of the cameos, plot points, and other related elements, but newcomers or casual fans won't get nearly as much out of the experience, and will likely be left whispering, "Who's that?" to their friends in the next seat. If you liked Deadpool and Wolverine, I would recommend 48 Hours. This is one of the earliest examples of a buddy cop movie, and one of the most influential films on the buddy comedy genre. This stars a wisecracking Eddie Murphy and a gruff Nick Nolte as a con and cop forced to work together to solve a crime. The personality combination leads to a good deal of humor, and anybody who liked the chemistry between Deadpool and Wolverine will appreciate the reminiscent chemistry here. If you'd like to stick with comic book movies and want another film full of cameos and surprise unannounced supporting characters, you should check out Spider-Man: No Way Home. Like Deadpool and Wolverine, this was an MCU multiverse event film that succeeded in achieving some redemption for versions of characters who never quite got a proper ending. And if you liked Wolverine here and want another R-rated X-Men movie, you'll want to check out Logan. There's some significant plot relevance for this film in Deadpool and Wolverine, but this would be a good choice even without that connection. It's important to note, though, that Logan is a serious and emotional drama, rather than an irreverent comedy like Deadpool and Wolverine. Alright, a couple questions for you guys. Number 1, have you seen Deadpool and Wolverine? If so, what'd you think of it? And number 2, what's your favorite reluctant buddy comedy? Be sure to leave your answers in the comments below so we can get a discussion going. Alright, so if you got some enjoyment, insight, or information on this review, I'd appreciate it if you'd hit that like button. And if you haven't done so already, please hit subscribe or at it to see more videos like this. Till next time, this has been Alyssa with Mainely Movies. The way life should be.